But I'm going to start recording now so we don't waste too much of this valuable comedic time. I'm here with Faith Elizabeth Lilley, which we were just talking about the exploration of our names just now. Yours is almost entirely something you have chosen and adopted, and I'm saddled with this boring Portuguese name. So for those people who are unaware and truly how in the world can you be? So Faith comes from a very long background in game design, fandom, tabletop, D&D Beyond, Wizards of the Coast, Evil Genius Games, and now you are the Chief Product People and Partnerships Officer at World Tree.
That's right, yeah, which abbreviates to C.
Yeah.
It's an amazing name.
I was looking at that. I really think that is the greatest use of that abbreviation. Who are you? I'm the C3PO.
Right. So, I'm leaning into that. One of the things I do is I need to be able to talk to everybody and speak the language they speak, right? Like whether that's technical people, marketing people, partners, everybody. So it kind of almost fits there as well.
Yes, exactly. So not necessarily 3 million forms of communication, but certainly many forms of communication, including diplomatic. There is definitely a diplomatic aspect, I guess, to your profession. And I think the C3PO is a perfect encapsulation of that term. I was also noticing by your Facebook profile you were talking about the upcoming Mass Effect board game, which I am terribly interested in as well. Real
looking forward to that. I was chatting with Chris over at Modifius about it earlier this year, and the team there, they're crushing it with some of the stuff they're doing with board games and various role-play game licenses they've got. Fallout one's pretty good too.
Yeah, we had Chris on a couple months ago talking about the Homeworld board game.
Mm.
But even though I love both Homeworld and Mass Effect, I think I'm more interested in the Mass Effect game just because I like the kind of its jib. I like the use of its, you being a cooperative game. I think that's a very good fit. We're going to have him probably on the program in a couple of weeks. I'm going to see if I can squeeze Mark Meir as well.
That'd be good.
Yeah, well, it's weird that it's kind of weird that Mark's a friend of mine. It's kind of weird. Like I'm friends with Commander Shepard. So it's very, very cool. So I assume you've played Mass Effect.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All three. Well, I'm going to say all three of them. I kind of flirted with Andromeda a bit, but it wasn't the same.
Yes. I actually ran a video on my channel. It ended up being 2 hours talking about the canon of Mass Effect and the implications. If people goes, there's no canonical Mass Effect. I go, well, there kind of is if you really think about it. I won't go into details because that's more of a selfless plug here. But what were your dominant choices? Like, what was your playthrough like when you ran through Mass Effect? Who did you pick?
First off, interesting when the trailer came up and it was like, that's Mark Meir's voice. I didn't recognize him because, I didn't play with Male Shepard as my lead. Duh. So my choices, I was Renegade all the way, baby. Grabbing the people that look like they've done the bad things and throwing them through the window. It's a thing.
Wild.
It's a video game. It's, the whole trope of not being the bad guy, being the good guy, but not being the good guy everybody wanted to have, just the one that, it's a good guy, but having the character that everybody got stuck with because they're the only one that can do it, right? Even though they are not a great person or they're not a wonderful human being. And there's some sort of redemption side to that as well. And in that playthrough, when I did Mass Effect 3 at the end of it, I managed to make it through all of the companions, even played Renegade. So I was pretty happy with that.
Oh wow! Did you have a romantic preference in that game?
I'm trying to think back. my ADHD brain kind of merges it all into one a little bit, and I played through a few times since then. In terms of preference, probably Talia.
Oh, really? Like Tally, you mean Tally?
Tally, sorry.
Yeah.
Tally, not Talia, yeah.
Well,
It's just an interesting story. It's so different.
yeah, because I played the game. I have two run throughs. I have a femshep and I have a male shep, and the male shep picked Talia and the femshep picked Garrus, and that was just kind of my playthrough. But it's interesting to see. I had a conversation with numerous people that were kept on trying to say, well, no, there's a canonical romantic interest. I was like, oh no, there isn't. But it seems like there was this push that there would be this kind of implication. I can't wait. Unfortunately, I can't see the romantic interest being part of the board game, but I'm looking forward to it. Let's see. So we've been talking about World Tree for a little bit. So pretend nobody knows what World Tree is, and explain to our listeners,
Sure.
Frank, what World Tree is.
Okay, like the elevator pitch on this, it's a little bit wild in places, but before I even explain what it is, I actually want to talk a little bit about the vision that got us to imagining what World Tree could be. So that's born out of just after years and years in the tabletop industry and being playing roleplay games since I was a child. I just want everything to be a better place for everybody that's involved, working in the industry and seeing the struggles that all the people I work with go through to be able to get their content out, especially working on the digital side and how tough it can be getting content onto websites. We were like, there's got to be a better way of doing it, and it's got to be a more ethical way of doing it as well that actually benefits the whole community, which led us to say, hey, okay, so, we built D&D Beyond the first time. Why not do it again, but with the benefits of hindsight? And like, this is technically my fourth time around working on VTT. So I know what I'm doing. I know how we build this and build it right. So don't have all the tech debt that a lot of the other sites have. Build it properly and make it so that we can put every game system on there and empower creators, because that's something that everybody's missed. So I think if we look at all of the other VTTs, because that's the common thing, virtual tabletop, everybody knows, with its D&D Beyond, Demi-Plane, Roll20, Foundry, they're focused very much on an experience for players and GMs and selling them content. So here's a book that you're going to buy and play it. And it gives you rules for characters and your character sheet and the dice. Everybody's familiar with that. And honestly, there's a new VTT pops up every other week out there where somebody's got a really great idea of how they're just going to make it that bit better. But what about publishers? What about the creators? What about the people who are trying to write these games and create them and giving them a better experience as well to be able to level up the entire industry? And that's where we're at. That's if you go and look at the sites, we talk a little bit on there about vision and mission and values. I don't want to bore you all with that on here, but that's
so the
where we're at.
So the website is you're on Instagram under World Tree RPG.
We're on most socials under World Tree RPG.
WorldTreeRPG.com, World Tree RPG on YouTube, on X, Instagram. I think this is fantastic. And so obviously, I wouldn't say the difficult question is how, given the number of VTTs, how well do you think you can stand out among these various other platforms?
Sure. So that's really, having a great idea is very different to being able to be successful at bringing that idea to fruition.
Of course.
First off, there's a lot of challenges. One, can you build it? Okay, yeah, we could do that. We can find engineers. We are, I know a lot of engineers. We're working with engineers. We're working on actually getting a World Tree started in the build process at the moment. So that's great. But history is full of great technical solutions to problems nobody had, and then they fail, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody actually needed them, or nobody was able to actually tell the right people that they needed it, or or what it even did. So you've really got to make sure that what you're going to build is something people want and need. So we've been spending quite a lot of time on that. And that you position it correctly. And it's not just about can you market it, but in today's world, you need a way of being able to let people know that you exist and that this is something that they're going to find interesting. So our approach to that again has been just looking at the way that we have our mission and our values is, hey, we don't want to just throw a load of money to Facebook to spend on adverts. That's just not the way we want to do this. So we've set about going out there and partnering with many of the top publishers in the tabletop role-play game industry to work with them. And that means that when we actually do hit the point of saying, hey, we're properly fully announcing this, here's videos, here's articles, we're going to be in a position where it's not just me and, and the other people who work at World Tree and Jason, our founder, saying, hey, look, this is what we're doing. It's going to be all these familiar faces and publishers saying, hey, look what we're doing together. Because we don't just want to be in a position where we're owning something successful. We're giving the company away to the industry, chunks of it, an equity, so that we're actually owned by the industry. This isn't about me trying to make money. This is about me trying to build something that is a lasting ethical way of making everything better for everybody.
Well, yeah, ethical, I think, is a great word to kind of employ on that, because that's one of the big issues people are having right now. But I mean, you're right. It seems like we're talking about trying to stand out. I mean, we have Foundry and Roll20 seem to be the big hitters. The ease of adapting third-party content to get your work on them can be varying. Foundry is relatively easy. Roll20 is relatively difficult, just from from my perspective, from my games. Getting myself on Foundry was relatively easy. Roll20, I still haven't been able to get on there just because the adaptation is a bit tricky. I was just I'm
gonna jump in a little bit here. So you say it's relatively easy to get on Foundry. Did you do that yourself as a game designer and a writer?
No, of course. I have no technical skills, so I have two people contracted. I have one person contracting to do the Foundry, and another person doing the Roll20. The Foundry guy got a prototype and a working model within a couple of months. The Roll20 guy still hasn't finished. Yeah,
I'm going to pull you back to something now, which is some core beliefs I've had for years now, and there were some guiding principles back when I was the senior producer for D&D Beyond, which is, hey, players don't want to read rule books, they want to play the game, right? So let's make our tools enable people to play the game. And we're kind of stepping that up with World Tree and taking it a stage further and saying, hey, when we're talking to publishers and game designers, like game designers don't want to write computer code, they want to design games, right? Why is the world missing that step where we don't have good, high-quality tools to allow game designers to actually choose like GUI to be able to say, hey, this is how I'm designing my game. This is how I'm designing my system. This is how this plugs together. I need ability scores, and they do this, and I'm going to have dice and dice pools and thresholds and all the different mechanics we get across so many games. And what if we then turned it on its head and said, rather than the world all being about building stuff on scraps of paper and play tests, with your friends, if you could actually build it all digitally and collaboratively in the first place and test it out on there, make sure it works. There's a lot extra to this that I don't really want to talk about until we fully announce it. But, I'm very confident from all the publishers I've talked to, this is a very compelling idea for people. And And we don't just want it to be for the big publishers, right? This isn't us just saying, hey, unless you're earning $1 million a year revenue, then you can't come on. We don't want to walk garden. We want to make this available to everybody. So when you've got teams that are 1 or 2 people, and they just contract out where they need to for like art or writing or there's basic skills, great. Then we want to embrace those people. We want to help them and empower them to be successful.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because for me, I also did mention I'm on Fantasy Grounds, and Fantasy Grounds was the only platform that offered to do the adaptation for us.
Yeah.
I got the same offer from Shard, but despite their offer 2 years ago, I still have yet to see any progress on that front. They keep on saying they're working on it, but and then I got a message just last week regarding something called what is this called? Fableflex.
Okay.
And it seems to be an app-based system. It's being done by First Sick Puppy Publishing. I haven't heard of that. Have you heard of them?
I have. I mean, here's the thing. As part of what I do, I have a Trello board that has like every single digital platform and VTT and aspiring system, every character sheet builder, every digital tool all on there with notes, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them out there.
Right. So for all the publishers at home watching this, all those people doing their own publishing company, how do we separate what are legit platforms and ones like, for me, I look at Fableplex and I'm like, I'm on the defense because I'm like, is this legit? Is this going to take advantage of the situation? Because looking at World Tree, when we were listening to your pitch, I was just like, well, this seems very open and upfront. It's all on board. You make a very, very tempting presentation. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm all on board. Like within the first few minutes of talking to you, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm all about this. But when I look at Fableflex, I get a message. They reach out to me. I'm like that meme of that young kid who's just like, I'm immediately cautious because I don't know their mission statement. I don't know if they have that same. I don't know if they're above board. Not necessarily specifically about both this, but how does somebody try to separate? When you say if there are hundreds of options now, how do you separate what could be something that's going to be manipulative or they could take advantage of your system and something that's legit? I mean, how does one kind of filter through these platforms?
I mean, it's difficult unless you unless you have like maybe the level of knowledge that I've got, and even I look at some of them and I have to like really delve into them. Like, it's not enough information, to really give me that position. I would say that if we're talking about a live service that's actually existing, they should be communicating how people are using the platform, what their pricing structure is. This is for users, and what you actually get for it. When we're talking about publishers like yourself, they should be communicating up front, like, hey, this is what you can expect in terms of revenue and the way that it will work. This is what we want from you. And, I've spent a lot of time recently working on our partnership agreements to make sure that we're getting those sorted. So, very black and white with like, hey, you get this, we get this. This is how we're going to move forward together. Not because we want to be contractual about things, but because we want to be upfront and transparent about how we feel this should work and truly work with publishers as partners and adapt. One of the biggest things working in senior leadership, and especially at C-level, has taught me about the world. I'm not always right. Sometimes I'm wrong. And the best way to deal with being wrong or not being as right as you could be about something is to just say, okay, well, how can I be better? Let's take this in. Let's work out how we can move together. and what can I do to fix problems? What can I do to make things better? And to me, that's how a good leader works, and that's also how a good partner works.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Like I said, it's and yeah, I mean, it's and you're not the only person on this. Obviously, I've actually discussed this with other people involved. Although you're obviously, the more charismatic member of your team.
Whoa, that's not fair.
Oh, okay.
I mean, hey, so like I am the extrovert on the team, so I can talk for days and I don't have a problem with it. So that's all good. I will turn up to a convention and by the Sunday, I'm still in full flow and energized off it rather than getting drained from talking to people. So,
did you go to any recent events like DragonCon or Gen Con or?
No, I'm in the UK. And, I'm at the moment we're bootstrapping World Tree to make sure that we can get things where we need to be. So hiking down on costs. Jason went to Gen Con. I was at the UK Games Expo earlier this year, which was great. I got to talk to a lot of people there. It's interesting. I was there the entire weekend, and it was only about 2 hours from the end, and I'm finally cleared my decks from all the meetings I needed to have, and could go have a look around.
Right. So speaking of recent events, and we were having a little bit of a joke about this in kind of the pre-talk, that 2 weeks ago, Wizards of the Coast had their D&D Beyond video when they were talking about what they were going to be offering. I assume you watched that. What were your initial and then your more cohesive thoughts you had days later when you had a chance?
Okay. I mean, let's try and zero this down to be a little bit more precise. So we're talking about D&D Beyond and the 2024 Players Handbook, and
basically
it's gone down or what?
Well, obviously, I'm a person that's currently looking at this, and I'm interested in a couple things from a publisher. I have a couple questions. One, how much is 2024? How much of the 2024 and 2025 publications, how are they going to differ their system from the 5e that we know? What's happening with D&D Beyond? What's happening with this virtual tabletop that they've been showing off, that they've been working on way longer than I think some of us thought they were working on? And how is this going to invite and bring in people? But more importantly, is there the threat of gatekeeping systems and people who necessarily don't want to play with these specific frameworks?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, right? So, okay, let's jump into this. So, I guess first thing to say is that, I spent 5.5 years building D&D Beyond from the early days where there was only a handful of us there. And, with that, I moved across to fandom, and then we were acquired by Wizards of the Coast, and I was there for a while. I was laid off. I finished January last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, January last year. Seems like forever already.
2024 has been a very weird year, I know.
Yeah, I think the last 5 years has been a couple of decades, right? So I also have to be very careful about what could be considered commercially sensitive and things that I do know from back then. Things. So, first off, I had a plan in place for how we're going to embrace doing some of this, and what I see now is not where the plans were then, and that's fine because plans change and things happen. I'm a bit sad to see that what actually materialized is, should we say, more focused on generating revenue than it is on good user experience. And that's the thing, right?
Which I think is a common thing.
I don't want to get bitchy or throw shade. I don't want to come across like I'm somebody with an axe to grind because I got laid off. I'm not.
No.
It is amazing, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter about what happened. I've moved on. I've done other things in my life, and I'm now building something I'm hugely passionate about. So when I say that I'm disappointed in the way they've handled it. I'm disappointed as a consumer who has a lot of inside knowledge on how the systems work. I'm disappointed they put out a statement that said, hey, we're going to update everybody's characters to the 2024 rules, when it was one of the core principles that I had in place was we never ever mess with anybody's character, right? There's really personal things. You might be playing that for years. It's a really, really personal thing to you as a player, and to have suddenly your character changed because it's been updated to new rules. It's a really unpleasant thing to happen, right? Now your character plays differently. Maybe the spells now do different stuff. You're in the middle of a campaign. Like maybe you're even in the middle of a fight between one session and another, and now your character's different. So I just really couldn't wrap my head around how they'd come to the decision that would be okay.
Right.
Because it never would have been previously. Not.
So yeah, for me, there was that. And I find it interesting that there was this push for playtesting, that they were sending out a bunch of stuff, and then that kind of just upped and stopped for a while, and we haven't seen much since then, which was something that we saw with 4th edition, where there were updates, and then everything went quiet. With 5th edition, I was on the alpha test. I saw a bunch of the rules, and then there was a bit of a gap until we saw the final rules, and I was just like, wow, you guys changed your mind on a lot of topics before that.
Yeah.
And I've been getting a little triggered from a lot of the other YouTube video vloggers that have made, I feel, really brash assumptions about what we're getting. There's been the fight of, it's 5.5. They just don't want to call it 5.5. So I'm saying it's 6th edition. They're not calling it 6th edition. And I was like, you do realize those are two very inflammatory statements. 6th edition implies a completely incompatible system because 4 wasn't compatible with 5, 5 is not compatible with 3, and so forth. But 3.5 was just a couple tweaks here and there from 3. There was something where it was really easy. And the first initial playtest that we had come out, I was just like, well, this is simply telling, they're redoing how classes are built, but when you get in your sheet and you sit down, you're rolling your dice the same way. It's not like, now saving throws are going back to the way 4th edition did. So like there was no way you couldn't grab a monster manual and say, well, we're just going to play this as it is. But it seemed like looking at the books now, monsters still look about the same. They've added a couple new rules regarding weapon specialization. But beyond that, I'm like, okay, this doesn't look like they are trying to rebrand a new incompatible system. This looks more like a slightly refined 5.5. Has that been your experience, or do you think they're going to try to pull the rug on it?
Let's talk about deconstructing what roleplay game is a little bit. So when you're talking about characters, at the end of the day, if you look at a core principle of 5e, like, hey, when you're generating your build scores, you can roll dice, you can use points, you can use the standard array. Yeah, these are all things that are possible. At the end of that, you've still got the ability scores for your character. You've made different leads to get there. And you extrapolate that out and you get what we're seeing now, which is it doesn't matter whether you use the 2024 rules or the 2014 rules to build your character. You've got a character and you can play the game. Mechanically, it will still work the same. Yeah, other than the features that you've got to maybe come in at different levels as you level up and so forth. But you can still play the game with it. So, and it still fundamentally works. Yeah, it's not a full edition change. It isn't. But one of the things that it does certainly throw me a curveball for like what we're doing, is looking at how the community react to this and work with it. Is everybody's going to go, cool, we'll just use the new book? Or what I'm actually seeing emerge is people saying, well, I've already got a game and it's already running and we already know the rules. But I kind of like those new rules. So they're taking bits of the 2024 updates and saying, cool, I like this bit, I'll use it. I like that bit, I'll use it. And I think a lot of that is because there's so much really good third-party 5e content out there that's what we've all been doing for the last few years, right?
Yeah.
We've all been taking the bits we like from third-party content, going, cool, I will use that in my game. It's really difficult to support that on a digital platform. So I'm not surprised that what's happened with D&D Beyond, but I was very amused when I jumped on there earlier and was able to multi-class my 2014 Warlock with 2024 Warlock levels as well. So they've clearly got some work to do to try and iron things out there as well.
Yeah, because from my worry,
the code base works.
Yeah. See, for me as a game designer and a player, I obviously have an opinion. I would, and I think that there is a wait and see mentality going on right now where people are like, okay, is this going to be something like when they do Pathfinder 2nd edition? Should we still be buying third-party 5e products, or is it going to be a point 6 months from now where it becomes as completely kicked off the table as quickly as they tried to do that with 3.5 when 4th edition came out? They didn't succeed, but they very much kind of did succeed, and how quickly they were able to punt 4th edition to the bin when 5th edition came out. Something that I was also a little annoyed with, because I made my career with 4th edition. That's where people got to know me.
Sure.
So for me, especially considering how big the market is for 5e and how so many third-party publishers got their career going, I'm worried that they're going to find ways to tweak the system enough to saying, well, unfortunately, all those 5e, core 5e books are not compatible anymore. You're going to have to, all these 5e publishers are going to have to print out new variations of their books to make them compatible. And that was the worry. And then, of course, now we're seeing, to make things even more muddled, these 5e clone systems that came out, which I was very frustrated about, because I was trying to make the case going like, yes, I know you guys feel you have to do this because you have brands, but I felt that this self-preservation status being conducted by these very large third-party companies basically said, we are only preserving our own status. Although we're going to offer the system to you, we know perfectly well that by muddling the 5e market, we're actually making the situation worse. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? So, I mean, first off, let's take a walk back to what's happened with the 2024 D&D rules. So, I don't believe, from all the interactions I had with the meetings I had with Perkins, Crawford, and the rest of the team over there, that was like sometimes several times a week we were talking about the rules and where they were going and how this was going to work and how we could update D&D Beyond. That's like back in mid 2022, those discussions.
On an insert question, how far was 2024's edition in development when you left? How much were you exposed to that? Did you really have no idea what they were doing? But you had some idea where the wind was going? I
mean, so a lot of it's quite guarded silo. A lot of it was iterated on. So if you look what happened with Tasha's, that was preparation for where this was going. That's like talking, like setting people up with like, hey, this is how it's working. We want to start disconnecting some of these things like, the ability scores and races. And then you look at the next step of that was Monsters of the Multiverse. And that did the same again. So it's like a step in the direction of where it was headed. So, this has been the course for at least 3 years, right?
So in this case, situation where like, if you have picked up the books, you've been seeing the lore, when you open the 2024, you're like, well, none of this is a surprise. It's when you see a road and the car is driven a kilometer, like, well, I kind of know where they're heading in some of these topics.
Yeah. And the details, right? Like sort of what color the road is when I got there. Some of that when I opened the book, I'm like, oh, cool, they decided to do that. And we talked about things like how additional features could be added. There were some really cool things that the rules team came up with that kind of got vetoed because it moved too far away from feeling like 5e, even though I think some of them were really great developments for the game and would have made it better. Because of the promise of, hey, this is still 5e, it's also still 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons.
So there was talk about potentially pushing it for further away from 5e, and there was those conversations, and they pulled back from going to...
The commitment has always been like, we don't want to go with another version. And I've got thoughts on, why that was and why that happened. And I think a lot of it's going to be wrapped up in what happened when 4e happened and, when Pathfinder exploded back in the earlier days. So there's a very big thing around sunk cost fallacy. A lot of people have spent a lot of time and a lot of money on 5th edition. And if they said, hey, we're releasing 6th edition, then that disconnects. And all those people that have been going, well, maybe I'll try another game, but I'm invested in 5e, and go, oh, well, that's it, I'm done with this, then maybe I will go play those other games. Maybe I'm just going to go play multi-cut games, or maybe I'm just going to go play Cyberpunk, or maybe I'm going to play Pathfinder instead, right? So by saying, hey, this is still 5th edition, they're still preserving that whole sunk cost approach of people going, I am still invested in this game, and presenting it as step changes along the way is the approach for dealing with that.
It's fascinating too, because
if you look at what's happened with classes and races, species and backgrounds, they're now functionally different. All of them are functionally different to where they were for the 2014 rules. And like you said, that causes a lot of problems for the third-party market. If you look at any of the books that come out prior to now, some classes, I think, sure, you can use them. The new Player's Handbook's got a passage on how you update that content to make it work. So cool. You can still use it. But it requires a bit of work. And there's one thing that I've learned over the years that a lot of GMs don't have. It's extra time to make stuff work.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't already function in what I've bought, right? Nobody wants that. People want what they've bought to just work.
Yeah.
It's a convenience thing. So I know that the team at Wizards are working with all of the third-party publishers who've got content on D&D Beyond already to update their character options so that they do function with the 2024 rules, which means that they're then, going to be having version control on their own products for that as well. Because, hey, this is the 2014 compatible, this is the 2024 compatible. And so in that respect, I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say it's not a new version. There was a sufficient step change that people need to understand when they're looking at a third-party product. Is it compatible with the 2024 rules without me having to do any work?
Right. Because that gets it, and I think it's definitely something. And for me, it comes down to the point once again where, companies that have their products on D&D Beyond, but as we were talking about some time ago, that itself is also a curated list, and
It is.
yeah, and so there's still going to be, I feel, or I fear, a separation between tiers between third-party publishers that get to work with Wizards and then the ones who don't, and that's going to be, and I think there's potentially a wait and see approach going on with some people in with consumers, whether or not they're going to look at it and go, I want to support these 5e products, but I don't know where the window's blowing. And you mentioned earlier the fact that if something is too different, if a thing is too adverse, they run the risk of creating another Pathfinder where people will go, we don't want to touch this system. And we saw this a year ago with the OGL fiasco. And suddenly, within a couple of months, rival 5e systems came out. So it doesn't, you don't even need to put out an alternative system. The threat of an alternative system would be enough to create that type of division, which runs that risk of saturating the market and diluting the brand.
For real. And I love that there's a lot of this additional passionate creation out there. So whether you're looking at, second edition Pathfinder, whether we're looking at Tales to the Valiant and the Black Flag stuff from Global Press, whether we're looking at the advanced 5e level up from the End World, And there are many others as well. DC-20, that's looking like it's going to be pretty cool, right? And then you've got others that are coming out where they've gone, you know what, we're just completely moving away from this even further. We've got MCDM with their system, Drawsteel, that's looking pretty cool as well. Dagger Hearts out there, they're making strides. And they're just going in complete different directions. It's the same, like, we're done with that, let's do our own thing. And I think that once these companies have been around for a while, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I know that a lot of publishers I've talked to kind of hit that point of, we don't really want our entire business model and our future tied up in another company making the decisions for the product.
Yeah, and so for me, it comes down like, and this was a very volatile topic among people that I was talking to, either on Discord or on YouTube channels, where I made the comment, the fact that is Dungeons and Dragons, is 5e a rule system, an operating system, and I brought up the point where I look at it and going, from a purely economic standpoint, there is, people go, I don't want to be beholden to one system. And we go, well, in the electronics industry, that's exactly how it's always been. And it's something that we have been, like, we don't have 15 operating systems. We have Apple OS and we have Windows. That's it. We have 2 or 3 game platforms. We have Steam, we have Epic and GOG, and that's about it, you know. But even then, they're all working within the framework. We have 2 graphics cards. We don't have 40. And so when it comes to video game production or any app, you have to play within someone else's sandbox. And I find it very strange that Hasbro didn't really appreciate, at least initially, the fact that, look, we can establish an operating system that becomes a baseline. And they did it effectively with 3.5. And that's where and some people called it the worst age, but a record number of third-party companies emerged because of 3.5. And we had an even larger record number of companies that made it out in 5e. I was talking with the guy who runs Green Ronin, whose name escapes me, about 20 years ago. And he said there are more people have walked on the moon that can make a career out of role-playing games. He said this to me 25 years ago, right? Just from 3.4, before 3.5 really hit big. And now we have...
I just remember that. He's also called Chris Fannin, right?
Yeah. And now hundreds and hundreds of people, including partially myself for a short time, role-playing was my primary income source. I was making $2,000 or $3,000 a month off of this. And that was because what I felt was a kind of a global acceptance of 5e as the base operating system everyone else could play with. And as long as the OGL stayed the way it was, and they went with the Creative Commons to try to kind of reinforce and try to placate people by saying, like, no, we want this to be the baseline. And I was trying to make that argument, and of course a lot of people really went after me and said some really nasty things. It's one of my most disliked videos when I was trying to make that case. And so, no, I want different operating systems. I go, yeah, from a consumer, you may think that's really useful, but when you get 5 strangers together, and you go, okay, what are we going to play? Well, we can spend a whole session learning a game system that half of us don't know, but we all know 5e, we can get in and play. And if you're a third-party publisher and you want to make a career, knowing that 70% of Roll20 uses 5e, it's hard for me to write for any other system. I wrote my Amethyst game for 5 different systems: Pathfinder, 13th Age, Savage Worlds, Fate Core, 5th edition, 4th edition, and the 5e outsells all the others combined. And so from a purely economic standpoint, it was difficult for me to say, oh, like, I totally support, all these OSR and all these other variant systems and so forth. When I look at it from me and go, yeah, except with those systems happen, I have 2 choices: get an IP, which I can't afford, or produce a system that's very fancy, that's very expensive, and run the risk that I'm going to not pull people who are interested in my operating system. Or I run with 5e, which a large group of people had. And when we had the schism with all these Black Flag, I was just like, well, this is the worst case scenario. And since in the last year, I've seen my revenue drop off. I'm not seeing my Pathfinder, 13th Age, Savage World, and Fate Core sales go up. 5e just went down. And that becomes a frustrating period for me. And I'm worried that a lot of third-party publishers are going to go belly up. And I feel like the fan community is not aware of how this economic system works, and they're a little apathetic to the way it works.
And yeah, I agree with you on chunk that. In that it's incredibly hard now to make a successful new role-play game system, right? It just really is, unless you are a known name with a known IP, sure, Critical Role, of good success, or are only process being successful Daggerheart, great. And there's the Cosmo role-play game was just
just made all the money.
$500,000 on Kickstarter. That's so wild. I'm super happy for them. And I'm sure they'll do a great job with that. But that's born off the IP rather than them having a load of people that great, I know this is going to be a great system. When we look at frameworks, as much as I quite happily play 5e, I don't feel I disagree with you that it's a good standard system to use for everything. In the same way that I wouldn't run my web server off a Windows system. I'll quietly use Linux. Thank you very much. Right? Let's use the right tool for the job. So, there are games I played that offer a very different approach, where it's more about the storytelling and the relationships between the characters rather than attack rolls and hit points and saving throws. I love those games as well. You can't do that with 5e without a lot of changes to it, so it's not the right base system for doing those kinds of games. There isn't one system that we can do everything with. But if you want to play games that are they don't have to even be fantasy based. If you want to play games that are based around tactical combat, yeah, it's pretty good for that.
Yeah, from my perspective, yeah. Okay, go sorry.
And yeah, and like you said, when you've got 70% of the market playing that, it's a very difficult proposition. If you say, "Hey, I've got this great new setting. Doesn't it sound amazing?" And cool. What's the game setting? Well, it's this new one I've done myself. And he's like, okay, well, it's going to have to be super good then for us to want to do it. But if it's 5e, I could pitch that to my existing group who know those rules and say, should we play this? And they're like, sure, give it a try. I'm running a Grim Hollow campaign for Ghost Fire Gaming at the moment. If it wasn't 5e, the people that I'm playing with probably wouldn't have gone for it. One, because we're all scattered around the country, so we need a good digital system to be able to play it on. We need to have a VTT that actually supports the game. That's becoming increasingly important to get anywhere with the game system, right? But the tail bit that you added about the awareness from the community, but I'm not even sure what the community can say or do about what's happening with third-party creators, because you're not the only one I've talked to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of publishers in the same position of, okay, I brought out this setting book for 5e, but it's also for Tales of the Valiant, and it's also for Pathfinder, because they're sort of similar enough I can make it work for that.
Yeah.
And then do they bring out one book that's got all of those rules in it? Do they bring out separate versions because the printing costs of producing all of those, or do you just do it as a PDF and that's it? It's hard. It's really hard to make that work. We are not. It's a saturated.
I am testing out next month an idea. So with Amethyst, I published a completely different book for every core system. 13 Days Savage World Fake Core were easy. 5e I knew. Pathfinder was a nightmare for various reasons, just because the technical creating monsters for the original Pathfinder was always been, I don't know, it just triggered me. I had dreams and trauma, PTSD from making monsters in Pathfinder. But 13th Age, love 13th Age. I wish I could write for 13th Age all the time. No one buys it. I just hate it because I love the system. It's such an easy system to play through. I love the creators; they're great people. I love Pathfinder's creators; they're great people as well. But it just there was, there was there's a certain mechanical hindrance when making monsters. And I've always said, 4th edition, I loved it because it was written for GMs in mind. And that's why I love GMing 4th edition, because I'm like, players are like, what about this? Like, oh, that's all your responsibility. I get to do this. Because they took so much responsibility out of the GM's hands and gave it to the players, which it's like, about time you guys did some more work. So I got to have some more freedom to create role-playing. But for me, 5th edition, although I made comments about being operating system, I also said it was a sandbox, which means someone says, like you said, this is a 5e system. Okay, but they've added this ladder system, which is what Ultramodern does, or we've peeled apart backgrounds, which is what they've been doing, and which they end up doing with some of 5e's official publications. Wizards of the Coast official publications, where they've played around and broken apart backgrounds, so it's a much more varied and much more adjustable. But you can go, and someone goes, okay, sure, but when we get down to the nitty gritty, yeah, you're still rolling dice, you still have these attributes. And so there are still ways to tweak the framework to do what you get. I've been told repeatedly from people, you can't do sci-fi with 5e. I said, hold my beer, and I did it. And now there's tons of people that are doing 5e sci-fi, and for some strange reason, but 5 or 6 years ago, I got the same thing with 4th edition. You can't do 4th edition sci-fi. I was like, yes, you can. You just got to think it through. So that's always been the concern for, I think, a lot of people about that industry. But my idea I have coming up next month is to, instead of putting out a physical book, which is rules agnostic, it's the setting, it's the fluff, it's the lore, it's the artwork, and creating in a way where it almost stands on its own as a narrative art piece. In the same way, if you're kind of in my age bracket, the Terran Trade Authority handbooks from the early 80s, or written by Stuart Cowley, which was probably one of my biggest inspirations growing up, were these 3 books. Actually, there's a lot more than 3 books, but back then, were three core books by Stuart Cowley, who did it a brilliant way of creating that. And then we're having a new version, still in Stellenberg, with Electric State and Tales from the Loop. And now we have a Tales from the Loop role-playing game. But I'm like, would it be interesting to create a narrative art piece which has the lore and the setting the same way we see like the Lord of the Rings lore book. And then we have a PDF that says, okay, here are the race rules, here are the weapons, here are the stats. And that's a PDF. And we can make that PDF for 4 or 5 different systems. And that's 5-10 pages. And we don't have to print. So you have this beautiful lore book that tells you everything. And then you print up a 10-page PDF, which gives you the mechanics for whatever system you may want. For Fate and Savage World, they'd be smaller. For 5th edition Pathfinder, it may be larger. That's the experiment I'm doing right now with this cosmic horror RPG called Threshold, where when you purchase it, you get the 5e module and the main book. And if we ever want to produce Fate Core or Savage World, we're simply going to add those to the file listing. So if you want the Threshold RPG, you buy it once and you get it for all the systems. But I don't have to redo the layout for every single system, because all the lore and all that is contained within one book, and then everything else is contained in the other one. If that works, I'd like to pursue that with other rule systems. One called Retroverse, where once again we put everything into a setting, into a separate file, and then going here are the species traits, here are the unique weapons for Pathfinder, here's the unique entry stuff for that. And then it's like, here's a 10-20 page book, and not worrying about it. But that's my way of trying to make it work. My own issue for me is that I have to go out to the community and going, I can't keep more than one system in my head at one time. I have to unlearn a system to relearn. I don't know if other people are like that, but it's a condition I have. Like, I wrote 13th Age. I could not tell you how it plays. I'd have to reread the book and to relearn it. So I've had 5e hardwired in, but if I go to relearn Black Flag, I'll be 5e. Oh, how does that work again? So I have to go to the community and going, like, I need someone to do a Savage World of Fate Core. Like, if you guys want to do the system, tell me. I'll put it in the system. I'll pay you for that adaptation. We'll add that to the file listing and make that work larger. And that's my only solution, is to try is to make the setting book agnostic or separate. Divorce it from the rules.
It's a great idea, and I've seen it done well elsewhere. I think it's going to become more popular in the future as well. Saying, hey, look, here's a great settings book, and it doesn't have the rules and the crunch in it, because why do you need those? right? If you're talking about the world and the setting and the geography and the politics and or here all the key NPCs and why they're important, you don't need stats for them there, right? But it's a convenience thing, though. In the same way that, like, potentially hot take here, but I think the current format for D&D, official adventures, is bad. Because it doesn't present the information in the way that you need it to use it to run the adventure. So you're always flipping backwards and forwards all the time, right? And especially with a physical book, like if I'm in it digitally, I've got lots of tabs open, cool. But like the physical book, I've got like post-it notes in there trying to do it to remember this place, that NPC, and so forth. And it's just not a good experience. I think they're going to sound much better. And yeah, having those books present the rules as and when you need them is a great thing for an experience as a GM. But at the same time, if you've got them on hand elsewhere, then you're able to get all the information you need on the pages of the book and then reference the other thing that's got the rules and the stats on separately. That could also be really, really good as well. So I don't think it's just settings books. I think adventures have got a lot of mileage in the future of being a lot more systems agnostic. I'm seeing a lot of adaptations, not just stuff you've done with Amethyst, but like a lot of adventures out there that are, hey, this is 5e and all of these 5e adjacent systems. And I want to put all those on WorldTree, and I want to make them available for everybody. I think there's... I look at a vision for a digital future as well of being able to say, I want to run a campaign. Like, that's one of the big things that's building WorldTree around. Not where Roll20 did it and say, hey, like we're building everything around a map. Not the way that D&D Beyond did it. We're building everything around, you've got a character sheet and you can read some rule books. Because everything comes back in experience to getting together with some friends and saying, we're going to run a game. It's a campaign. It's bringing the people together. And then you go, hey, this is what we're going to play, and pull it in, understanding what game you're going to play, what the rules are, which books are available, and setting that up. And then, cool, now let's look at what we're doing with characters. And just, you pull maps in, and you pull characters in, or NPCs and monsters and stuff in, as and when you need them to be useful for playing the game, not just there all the time.
Yeah.
I certainly envisage a world where we have settings books that are system agnostic. So that's incredibly useful when you're looking at, and I'm going to say it, something like WorldTree, where, and what I didn't mention, we're going to run WorldTree on a subscription model. So you don't pay to buy the books. You want to try something? There you go. There it is. You've got a subscription. You can get access to whatever games you want. You decide that you're running D&D this week and going, you know what, let's try Call of Cthulhu or Cyberpunk or whatever. I want people to be able to, we really want to lower the barrier to entry for other games rather than people feeling they've got to stick with it because they've bought books.
I only have you for another few more minutes here because we're way off the clock here.
Yeah.
Because we talk. So the final thing about it was the D&D VTT. This, I guess it's
Sigil.
Is that what it's called? Sorry, is that Sigil? Is that what it's called?
Sigil. I mean, that's the name they've been using. That was the internal name for it for a while. And I think it got leaked at some point, and they've just kind of gone, "Oh well, just stuck with it." 'Cause that's the name they've been using at presentations.
I'll make one thought, and then I'm going to open it up for you. And I always think of Magic: The Gathering. Magic: Gathering has a fantastic card game. I don't play it anymore, just because, as Will Wheaton calls it, the chase. I just kind of lost interest in that. But there's also the Magic Online game, which has been around and it's still around. I went online for Magic Online just recently, and I discovered that, hey, my account's still there. I got all my cards. I could build my deck, the moment I wanted to, and it's still functional. And they have been trying to make other Magic Online video games happen that are flashy, that have a lot of cool animations. And I always see them fade out of memory. And Magic Online, the original Magic Online, is still there, still just a carbon copy basic graphical version of the physical product that's still around, despite the fact that they may try to do all these Magic Online variations for consoles that I never hear anyone talk about. And I'm worried that in their attempts to make Sigil a video game version of the tabletop D&D, it's going to turn people away rather than attract them to the game system. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm gonna give you a very quick one on this because I know a lot about this that I really can't talk about because commercial confidentiality, right? Like as part of the senior leadership team, I knew a lot about what was going on and what the direction was. Stuff I can tell you because it is public, because it's things they've talked about, and putting that together through a lens of someone with experience in the industry. So we know that Wizards of the Coast, and Hasbro, there was this big thing about Magic was like the first $1 billion IP within Hasbro. Isn't it great? And that that Chris Cox said he wants D&D to be the next one. That's cool. I mean, grow D&D. But when you're on like 200. I've forgotten the actual numbers from the earnings, what they did most recently, but like, what was it, $240-something million a year from D&D? And you can add in a chunk from all the licensing ads because they've done especially well recently with Baldur's Gate 3 and the movie. But it's how do you get from $250,000 a year to $1 billion a year? You don't do that quickly through organic growth, right? You don't do that by getting additional people into D&D from elsewhere in the role-playing game, especially when you've got 70% of the market anyway. So they had to come up with a step change, and the step change is let's focus on people who want to play video games, right? Let's not, and in that way, if I said to you, this is my own opinion and my own perception that Sigil and the D&D VTT is not targeted at people who already play D&D. It's targeted at people who play video games who think that D&D might look cool.
So, okay, yeah. So it's like, Chris, you're not the target audience. They're not looking to you. They're trying to attract. But for me, how do they pull people away from other people who, and like I said, people go like, well, I see what they're doing. I'll just play Baldur's Gate 3.
Sure. I mean, I'm going to say there's probably a really good reason why Larian, who have had really good support in modding and creation tools for all of their previous products, don't have something like that for Baldur's Gate 3. I would guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, very much you and I are not the target audience. People who are already playing D&D and already want to play D&D, not the target audience. Look at the separation I've already stated. If you're buying the books and the adventures on D&D Beyond, you won't be able to run those on Sigil. That's not how that works. You buy separate adventures that are designed for Sigil and for that experience. It's a different experience and it's a different game that happens to use the D&D rules, or should we say, I don't know here, but I would guess uses maybe a slimmed down version of the D&D rules.
So you think that, and the final resolution after all this is that you don't believe that this will directly impact other VTTs like Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, World Tree. You don't really consider them ultimately a competition.
Not really, no.
That's so refreshing, and it's quite I feel so much better now.
I wouldn't be sinking so much of my time, so much my time into building this if I thought the rug was about to be pulled underneath my feet by something that's it's like a super amazing system that is everything everyone's ever dreamed of. No.
Oh, well. You heard it here first, folks. So thank you. Like I said, I said 35 minutes and we're a full hour, and Paco said if you go over an hour, I'm going to hunt you down. So thank you so much. This was fascinating, and I'm glad you were able. Did you follow your post-it note? You made a comment. You had a post-it note that you weren't going to get spicy. Did you follow it to your letter? Do you think, okay, I feel good about this. I didn't go spicy. Too bad. I was hoping for a little spicy.
I mean, there isn't really much to get spicy about, right? Like, as I said to you earlier, I don't have like an axe to grind or anything like that. I'm really proud of what I've done.
Well, I'm looking forward to World Tour. I can't wait to see what you have in store. Obviously, I can't really push you for a timetable, but do you have an idea when we're going to know more, when this is going to start becoming more serious, like when we're going to see a launch?
Mm-hmm. So what I will tell you is that we are currently working on ironing out part agreements with different publishers. So the first time that I really want us to be shouting about what we're doing is once we've actually got that agreed and our partners are able to say, hey, not just, oh yeah, you like our game, here's another VTT that you can play it on, where our partners are able to instead say, look what we're building together for the community.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait, and I also looking forward to, because obviously I probably have another Kickstarter coming up soon. I was kind of make sure, like, okay, I got to distance myself from the juggernaut of World Tree that's going to monopolize the crowdfunding, and like, oh my god, I got to stay the hell away from this. Well, thank you again, and I can't wait for us to talk. We'll probably talk again. Once you have a date locked and we get close to launch, we got to get you back on. And hopefully we'll be able to talk more about the nitty-gritty about what World Tree is offering.
That sounds great. Would love to do so.
Well, thanks, Faith, as always. Faith Lilley from World Tree, thanks a lot for talking to me.